All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first day of CyberX. I hope you all have your coffees with you because you're in for a treat today. Today, we'll be discussing the role of the CISO. Is it a technical role? Is it a governance? Or is it a compliance expert? And where does it go from here? My name is Ireen Birungi. I am the Chief Information Security Officer at Interac Corp, and I will be your moderator for this topic. Joining me today on today's panel are some established CISOs and thought leaders in the cyberspace and community. But before we get into today's topic, let's do some introductions. Going in alphabetical order by first name, please introduce your name, title, where you work, and one main thing that you want people to remember you as. Well, I guess the first one would be Bill. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Irene. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bil Harmer. It is spelled with one L. I've been in the industry for 30 years now. I've been in security for 20. I specialized in privacy about 10 or 12 years ago as well. I'm currently the Chief Information Security Officer for SecureAuth. And I guess if I were to say what I would want to be remembered for, I wouldn't want to be remembered. I don't want to be, I want to be remembered as the guy that was not on the front page of the newspaper, the guy that was not the head of the breach. And that's what I strive for in the industry. I try to strive for consistency and security.
Perfect. Next, Daniel.
Yeah, so my name is Daniel Pinsky. I work for CDW Canada. I'm their CISO. I've been in the industry for about 22 years, mostly on the security side. What would I want to be remembered for? I would want to be remembered for a person that was able to bring the right people around the right table to solve whatever the problem is at hand.
I like that. And there's many of those to solve. Over to you, Kush.
My name is Kush Sharma. I'm the founder of a boutique cyber firm that specializes in governance and digital transformation. And I'm the former CISO of the city of Toronto. In terms of being remembered, I would say that if I can push forward the cyber agenda to the citizens of Canada and educate them, that would be my goal.
Okay, perfect. So we've got, don't want to be remembered, or at least you want to stay away from the front page. You want to sort of be the one that brings cyber agenda to the citizen and to the public. And of course, an area around governance, which is going to be great because this is what we're going to be talking about today. So let's get started. So as you know, today's topic is what kind of expert makes a good CISO? Responsibility, the CISO is obviously responsible for overall security program of an organization. But at the same time, CISOs tend to wear very many hats. And it's important that, that hat could be GRC, it could be technical, and, maybe you have to have a technical acumen to be in that role. So the topic really question is that, is it important for you to be a governance, risk, and compliance expert, or is it important for you to have a technical background and acumen to be effective in your role as CISOs? Kush, you were the last one, so we're going to start with you.
So I think in the past, the role was more technical. And I think probably all of us grew up tech because that was the only option, to be honest, at least from my experience. However, in today's environment in the last few years, the role has completely shifted from where it was before. And there's multiple tracks. The CISOs are really more governance focused, speaking to the executives, the board, and looking at what value the cyber organization can bring to the overall strategy of the business. So, from my perspective, that is the biggest shift. I'll save some for Daniel and Bill.
Speaking of Daniel or Bill, do you want to chime in on that as well?
I completely agree with what Kush is saying. Historically, 10 years ago, I think they were more of a technical role. With the change in the role over the last 5 to 10 years, they're a business person. Most of my job on a daily basis is dealing with governance, risk, legal, compliance. So is it important to have that technical foundation? I think it helps certainly when you're dealing with, the technical folks within your organization. It's not as important now as it was.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's a business role. Do not discount the technical aspect and that ability to translate technical into the business. I think that's probably one of our key aspects is how do we talk to the business about what we're doing. If we're in, the city, we have obligations. If we're in software development, we have obligations to our customers. And how do we deliver the business? Because without the business, we're not here, right? That's the thing. I think a lot of us, I'll speak for myself, but a lot of us missed on the way up was security was a purity, right? It was this higher level, almost religious experience of we have what we're going to attain. We're going to have perfect security. We're going to have all these things. And we became very closed and enclaved. And now we have to really open up and understand the business. We are here. We have to compromise in what we deliver, right? If it's too expensive, it's no good for the business. We make cost of goods too expensive. It makes the usability too difficult. And if it's not usable, people go around it. So we have to find that balance, and we have to translate the technical to the business back to the technical. I think that is the new role for us in the future. I think it will become less and less technical as people become more and more comfortable with what we're doing. And maybe as the robots take over and we forget everything anyways.
Well, I hope they can spare us, or maybe they'll save the planet, who knows? But I like that notion of security as a purity and equating that to religion, or a religion. And so just on that heel, so how do you on a daily basis balance risk, governance, and compliance when at times it could be at odds with each other, especially as we look to be business enablers? I don't know if you could just kind of continue on your topic there, Bill. Yeah.
I think they are at odds with each other and will always be at odds with each other. To find somewhere where they're not at odds with each other is nirvana. And God, I hope it's there somewhere. But you're always pushing the business, right? When you look at this in the I guess at the base level, nobody wants to spend more money on a product building it than they have to, right? And that's our fundamental issue when we start this. Like you look at startups are not going to put money into security simply because there is no product yet to deliver, no customer, no revenue stream, right? So why are they going to put it in? That's why when you look at that risk, how do you balance it? Well, you balance it by building the hooks on the premise that you will be successful. And I use that as a key nowadays, especially with startups, that if you're not building the hooks at least and the fundamental basis for a good, solid security program in your product in the future, then you're telling your investors you do not expect to succeed. And I'll tell your investors the same thing. You have no plan to succeed because you're not building it in now. That then turns it around. So I would say if CISOs could learn one thing, learn empathy, learn to understand what the startup guy is thinking, what the CIO is thinking, what the finance guy is thinking, what the CEO, what she's thinking. You want to know what they're thinking and why they're thinking it, because now help you put your expectations or your wants in their world.
Right. And so, but if we think about compliance and risk, in what that does in terms of, bringing to light some areas of improvements and gaps within an organization. And so do we still think that, those are still at odds with that business enablement hat that CISOs need to start to wear if they aren't already wearing? I want to hear that from you, Kush, on that.
Yeah, so I think there's still some learnings in the industry. So we are progressing. Many CISOs that are in some of the larger organizations have already transcended, let's say, to that next level, and they're really focused on the governance piece. And when we say governance, it's not, putting in a tool for governance. We're talking about executive governance, board governance, company governance, right? So we're looking at the structure, and we're looking at that versus can we accept some of the risk. So I think the change, from my view and what I've seen with my peers, the change in mentality from hold on, everything, to Bill's point, everything was kind of a no. And I walked into the last two organizations, and I could tell you the technical teams that reported to me, all they would say is no for everything. And then I had to change the mindset and say, we're a business, right? We're kind of like, if you look at it from an Amazon perspective, they're going to push a button. They don't care what happens in the middle, and they want their product in a day or two. And so our job is to coordinate that in the middle, right? So within our team, the technology team, the business team, the legal team, procurement, finance, or whatever we have to do in that magic box in the warehouse, we're going to do it, and we're going to pump out the product. And so the shift has to become to a client-centric focus, right? Just like any other area of the business. And I personally so one of my rules is that we don't say that we're a technical team. So we say that we're a business team, period, full stop. So I just completely, work on changing the mindset and the thought, and the bonus structures, the incentives, everything's tied to acting like a business. And so if anyone starts going into the technical and start put red flags up again with the business, then that's going to hit their performance. So it's a cultural shift that we have to look at, I think.
100%. So Daniel, on that culture shift and moving to more of the governance and having that balance between risk and compliance, because I kind of see this is where that balance beam needs to be on, and ensuring that there aren't at odds with each other. And again, going back to the business enablement, what's been your experience with how this works? Any examples that you can give us on where things have been at odds with each other, and how do we kind of get out of that so that we continue on this business enablement?
I think it's a daily balancing act between the various parts of the organization. And just last week I was speaking to somebody in my company, and we were talking about what we do on a daily basis. And to be honest, my job is a facilitator. At the end of the day, the business, to Kush's point, they want to push a product out or they want to push a service out, and that's all they care about. And it's kind of that middle portion. That is our job to coordinate and facilitate. It's also our job to let the business know that, yes, you may want to push this product out. Yes, you may want to push the service out, but we also have a business requirement to be PCI compliant or ISO compliant or NIST certified. And then it's our job to pull in the right teams, the right stakeholders from around the organization, and ensuring that we maintain that level of compliance or certification, which is still a business driver, but at the same time, still allowing the business to push itself forward. And it's just a lot of just educating different areas of the organization, and kind of helping them understand that the business must keep moving forward, but while the business is moving forward, we still have to ensure that those other pieces are balanced. And it's just a daily process, never ending.
For sure, totally agree with that. So on that balance scale, when you start thinking about the roles that you play in your respective organizations, whether it's consulting or whether you're working with small startups, or you have a boutique firm or large organizations, what would be your advice to those that are on their maturity journey on the balance between being that technical practitioner? I think we kind of touched upon it, but let's go a little bit deeper. But being that balance between being a security practitioner and the governance and compliance driven organization, how do they complement and how do they contrast each other? Daniel, can you start with that, since you just finished the last topic?
Sure, absolutely.
Good take on being in balance with that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. As much as we said that the role of the CISO is changing, obviously my career, if you look at my career, is a little over 20 years. I spent about 10 years in very technical roles and about 10 years in GRC. I still think having that breadth of experience is very, very important. So, if somebody was coming up and, they asked me, where should they focus? I still think starting in a technical role, like in the SOC, which is the nerve center of your security program, it's really important because you understand how all the pieces come together. There's tremendous value in that. And, even as you move up within an organization, often you at some point will pull yourself away from the keyboard but having that firm foundation will allow you to continue to converse and have meaningful discussions with those technical folks. So I still think having a few years in a more technical role and then exploring, governance and risk and compliance will make you very, very well-rounded as a professional. And I think that will serve you for decades to come.
Okay, I like that. Bill, Kush, anything to add on that?
Oh, absolutely. You need the basis, right? You need to know why you're doing it and what the people that will work for you are in for. If you look at companies like Manulife, when I worked there, they had a hypo program there, and you would see them, they would move people around and put them for a year here, a year there, into different departments. And why were they doing that? Because they were the next potential CEO, right? And if you don't know how the business works, right, how are you going to make the right decisions? Same with security, right? If you're going to move up and lead security, you should have your hand in and have sat in the SOC and run alerts and understand what fatigue is. You should have run pen testing and thought and seen how are your team running it. And to this day, I still go back and work with them. I still sit with them and try to understand, why do you do something the way you do it? I learn something new every day that way, so that helps me. But on top of that, they understand why I make some of the decisions I do around what they're doing. Why did I cut this program or add that program? Why did budgets get shifted? Why did we just simply make a decision to allow something to happen that they didn't understand? So absolutely, you want to have your hand in there. It just keeps you grounded.
Yeah, it sounds like an episode of Undercover Boss. I think it was, where you get to see what's really happening, how things are done, because when you're so, higher up, you sort of lose touch with the elements of what actually makes the organization work and what's not working. So, getting to some of those bits is important for you to sort of advance and ensure that, whether you're using your compliance, your governance, you can make it work. What about you, Kush? What on this journey and the balance, contrast, complements of security technical role versus the governance compliance? What are your thoughts on that?
So in terms of a CISO, I think we all established that we are more in the governance mode in this day and age. However, I still read a lot. So every day I'm reading maybe 5 or 10 articles on the technical stuff. So even though I'm not technical, I need to keep up with the technology. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind. It's changing literally every month or even less sometimes. And there's new entrants coming all the time. So I would say for a CISO level, where you're focused on the governance, you have to understand across all domains. And so that's the challenge, right? How much time do you invest in every domain of your own time to catch up on what's happening in the industry? So for me, it's like Mondays is the traditional cyber, Tuesdays is IDM, Wednesdays is, critical infrastructure. So I have a plan, and, I just do some research on each area every day of the week. And I don't spend a lot of time, but maybe half an hour, if I can squeeze it in, to catch up on some of the latest findings, or I'll catch up with one of my colleagues on LinkedIn or other media that are in that industry, and I'll just ask them a few questions. So simple things like that can be done. I think it's important to what Bill and what Daniel said. So even though you're a governance individual, you still need to keep up with some of the tech, and that would be not part of your daily work, but it would be something that keeps you educated.
I like that. I think I need your template because of what to look at every morning. Because I agree with you. It's information overload. There's just so much going on in so many different directions, and so it's tough to keep up with everything. But I think if you can kind of be more methodical and try your best as you can to just pick key areas, and it helps you to keep informed. I'm gonna veer off into just about this role. And it plays in balance with, talking about whether you've got to be an expert in compliance and governance or technical, but also just the reporting structure, because I think that could drive the way in which also the CISO role moves into in the future. So I want to get your thoughts on, where is this role best suited? And I think it's going to touch on these 3 points that we discussed. Maybe it's at odds of where it currently is, because I think traditionally it's either under the CIO or the CTO. I want to get your thoughts on, where do you see this role better suited so that it could affect the change and really maximize that business enablement?
I haven't reported to a CIO in years.
Okay.
I currently report to the CEO, and I sit on the executive team, and that makes changes simpler. I will say that plain and I've always said when you report to the CIO, you're showing the holes in the infrastructure they built. That's a conflict of interest right there. And years ago when I joined SuccessFactors, even though I had a reporting line up into the CIO with them, I had a dotted line to the GC, right, to our general counsel, and the agreement was anything that was a vulnerability went to the GC, because then it doesn't matter how human, like how honest you want to be or how truthful you're going to say you're going to do it. When you report to the person that you're showing the holes in, and they control your compensation, your bonus, your career plan, something's going to happen, right? It may not be intentional. It could be subconscious, but you're going to question your ability to present it. Are you going to present it as truthfully as it should be? You're going to soften it. Are they going to come bonus time go, okay, well, everybody gets 3%, but we get to move it around to see who's responsible. Oh, Bill ratted me out for that thing. So, so that's the fundamental problem. That's why it needs to be at the board. And when you look at it today, right, we are without security, without what we do, what 80-90% of the businesses aren't in business because car companies don't make cars. They're data companies that make cars, right? Everybody's about the data, protecting the data, whether it's personal data, whether it's marketing data, whether it's sales analytics, whatever. But we're all digital companies now, right? And this is a role that should stand on its own and have equal weight across that. Infrastructure is infrastructure. You can buy it. I hate to say this, but the role of the CIO is diminishing simply because infrastructure has become a commodity. Just buy it, rent it, and go from there. How you do it, right? That's the good CISOs, or excuse me, the good CIOs are becoming CISOs, right? They're learning from us and bringing that to their tool bag to say, here's how I build an infrastructure and I build it securely. And I see that start to blend as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, that conflict of interest, because it's pretty rife, and it's how do you really be truthful about some of these gaps and challenges that need to be fixed if it really is talking about the organization that the individual has built. So good point about reporting directly into the board and or CEO. But I guess maybe it depends also on the size of your organization. Does that matter?
It absolutely does.
Yeah. To have a direct dotted line to a CEO. Yeah.
It absolutely matters, the size of your organization and where it'll be. It could end up reporting in general counsel. I caution against reporting into finance, nothing against the finance people, but that is a fundamental argument of money in, money out versus risk. And you'll earn your stripes reporting to a CFO if that's the case.
Okay. Kush, Daniel, where do you see the role best suited? Just again, if we talk about all the areas that we just touched upon on how to be effective in the role of a CISO.
I completely agree with what Bill's saying. A massive conflict of interest there. What I would say is some organizations don't have the appetite, or maybe they're too small where they wouldn't want or the CISO to report directly into the GC. I have seen the CISO report through risk management, like a CRO. And that's kind of that other line that I've seen, which has been quite successful. That's the only thing I'll add.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, I've actually reported in several of my former roles on both sides. So to a CIO or CTO, and to the CEO, and I could tell you there's a big difference, right? So the conversations on one that are extremely technical, everything's about putting in tech and.
Oh,
I think we just lost Kush.
We just lost Kush.
He was definitely saying everything's technical. Perfect, because it's about the topic, whether you have to be a technical expert, but the reality is that his tech goes. So
it truly does change your conversation.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
When you talk to a CIO and your boss is a CIO, you're talking technical, you're talking functional ways to fix things, etc. When you talk to the CEO, they don't care. They want to know the bottom line. Is my cost of goods going down? Is my margin going up? Is sales being enabled? What's my risk of penalty? Can I get into Europe? Right. And those were conversations I had in early days on how do you sell in Europe without an ISO certification, especially an HR system. Right. I showed them how to do it. I used my technical skills and my risk skills to show them how we could sell there, and we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Daniel, that you brought up about reporting into risk, because I do find that risk tends to have a heavier weight in the organization to affect some of that change. So perhaps
Yes.
it's not a bad area, and so you can kind of be behind that veil and kind of get the necessary changes in the organizations are needed. But I think in my experience, I've never really had it in the CRO, but perhaps that's a way to move forward. So we're down to about 4 minutes of the session, and we are ready to take questions. And there's one that has come in, and that is, how difficult is it to manage these relationships in companies that are global?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's a
So working in a global organization, it's difficult. No, it's challenging. You know, certainly as we're trying to make decisions which are potentially impacting, or there are implications across different geographic regions, different countries. Certainly from a compliance point of view, you have to take into account, local compliance, local laws, local governance. So I guess the most important thing that I do on a daily basis is ensuring that I've reached out to the right stakeholders across the world. So whether that's the lawyers, whether that's privacy. Again, and I kind of stated this before, part of our jobs we facilitate to ensure that the right people are around the right table to solve the right problem. And so I would say it's challenging, but that's why it's really important to have those solid relationships across the organization where you really do trust each other and you work like partners to solve whatever the problem is at hand.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And in fact, when you take that and expound it a little bit further as well, you have to understand culture. The security mentality, the concept of trust, the things that are inherent as to why we're doing this are different in different countries, right? You are going to get different responses, and you have to learn to read those, right? You have to learn to read that a South American response is going to be markedly different from a German response. Is going to be markedly different from a Japanese response, right? And how do you then take those and roll with them? And then your solutions have to take into account the cultural aspect as well. Because when certain things are asked or when certain things are done, you can get pushback for reasons you would not understand.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And then, on top of the culture, it's just different jurisdictional laws, right? Like, with GDPR, it's a lot, stricter than perhaps in North America. So I think that's a pretty challenging one. But I think that you've hit it where it's about, facilitator and ensuring that you strengthen those relationships through trust within the various organizations, even as it spans globally. All right, we're 1 minute to the end. I told you we're in for a treat. Bill, Daniel, and Kush, like I said, are established CISOs. I think there's been a wealth of information that has been imparted onto you about just the role of the CISO and how it plays within the organization, and that balance between technical versus governance, compliance. And of course, it's not one or the other. I think there is one that goes into the other. And now it's about really establishing how do we mature so that we affect the change that's necessary, and also that we continue to be that business enabled, because to your point, Bill, like, we're not here if the business isn't here. So we got to work on that. With that, it's 10 o'clock, top of the hour. Have an amazing session. There's some great sessions ahead of you. So enjoy yourselves and have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.